Hello and welcome. My name is Nicolas Küschi and you just tuned into the newest devlog from Wisp, which is devlog 19 drafting games. In this devlog I will give a short progress report of how I'm doing at my game, and then I will pick one ludological topic to talk about, and if you're only interested in the ludological topic, click here and you will skip ahead to the right position. But right now, I don't have that much progress, so you might as well watch it, and maybe you will find out that you enjoy my game. If you do so, like it on Facebook and stuff. Anyway, so let's just jump into the progress. Right now, I'm just working on the replay functionality, and I've got it working pretty good right now. Like, not perfect. I basically have the player moving the correct way, and the avatars should also. Actually, I need to test um, the enemies will also move in the correct way already. I have the logic there. But what I still need to do is that these particles here and stuff are randomized. And I am currently having a little bit of struggle to getting them to behave the exact same way without getting the replays to a humongous size. Which usually what I will try to do is, if you're familiar with the concept, if not, just ignore it. I will try to give all these particles one seed and then have them react into the seed. But I'm currently running into some problems with that, and I will see if I can figure stuff out until next week. So that's already it. With that out of the way, we can jump right into the ludological topic today. Um, which is drafting. And what is drafting? Drafting basically is, or at least the really basic definition that most of us also know, is two people picking a team, like in school sports or something like that. Like you probably will remember the times where you played, like, let's say, basketball in this example, and two people were there, and one started to pick the best person, and the next one picks the next best, and then it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until everybody is picked, and then the teams will play against each other. This is done for one, so that in school at least, to break up, to always have the same teams. And that is because how this works is basically you can, depending on who you choose first, they will have different interests and different people they like, and they will prefer people they like over other people that are maybe a little bit better. And this way you will break up always having the same teams, and you will also break up that one team is really dominant, at least in theory. That will not always work because, as I said, some people might value their friends over other people, and then it might still happen that one team is way better than the other. Anyway, that's the basic definition. With that out of the way, let's jump into board games. I will first talk about board games a little bit here, because that's, I think, where the drafting mechanic or where the drafting mechanic is more used right now. We also have some examples for video games later, but I think the more interesting stuff is happening in board games. And then we will see how we can take what people do in board games and then use it. Or maybe what people have already done and copy the mechanic over. So how I was introduced into drafting, besides the school stuff, is drafting in Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering is a trading card game similar to Hearthstone and others. If you're not familiar with how Magic works, I will just give you a quick overview, and then we can continue to talk, because it's important to understand at least not the rules, but how the game is played, basically. Magic is usually consists out of a deck. A deck is basically a pile of cards, and this pile of cards is basically customizable. And with this customizable pile of cards, you will play against each other. How the rules are exactly is actually not that important, at least not for our discussion. But you need to understand that usually you will pre-build this stack of cards and then play against each other. And you do that by drawing a couple of them, and then each round drawing another card. How everything works is not important to the drafting discussion. What Magic is doing with drafting is they basically found a way, or found out that it's really fun for people to play with the cards when they open it. And so they basically build a system that says, in Magic you buy, maybe I should say that first, in Magic you buy these packs, and each pack contains a number. I will say 15. I think it was 15 at some point. I think it's less now. Anyway, the number is not really important, but let's say 15 cards, 15 random cards, and from these 15 random cards, when you play a draft, what you will do is you will pick one, and then pass the remaining 14 to your left, and everyone will do that at the same time, which means that every step of the way, everyone picks one card, and every time you pass, the next time you will pick a card, you will have one card less, and also the cards will get weaker. And then in the end, you will see who picked the best cards from the pool you had. There's still luck involved because these packs are random and some packs are stronger than others. Anyway, that's how Magic drafting works. You do that with 3 packs, so each player buys 3 packs, and then you pass all these cards around. And in the end, when all the cards are drafted, you will build your stack of cards and then play with it. So the drafting part is one part of the game, and then there's the actual playing part where you play the game out. This is something you will see a lot of times in drafting games. Often the game drafting is just one sub game basically before the actual game, and it is used to get more variation into the game. Yeah, I'm sorry for that. Anyway, so it's used to get more variation into the game, and I think that's a really valid reason also for PC games to do it. It's also not that expensive to build a drafting mechanic because it's just not that expensive to build. It's like a little bit expensive, but it should be fine from a complexity standpoint. Yeah, so with that out of the way, I will go to another board game, which is Seven Wonders, which I don't know how many people are familiar with it. I picked Seven Wonders because their drafting is the actual game already. Like, there's no other game than drafting. Like, that's an interesting way to think about it, because like with Magic before, we actually had drafting, only a sub game, and then you actually played the other game. And so what that does is, for one, it takes a little bit the relevance out of the draft, because first of all, Magic itself is random, so you might have random events occur there that lead you to win. Then it's also that even a better deck can lose against the worst deck, if the worst deck just is better against the better deck, like in a rock paper scissors kind of way. But rock paper scissors, everything is fine. But if you say you had a rock that wins 1% of the time against rock paper scissors, 1% of the time the rock wins against paper. So what you would usually do is you would always play rock, because like you have a 1% better chance than everybody else. Like, that's great. That's the thing you should do. But in the games itself, it might not happen. It might not help you, because the games itself might still play out very differently. Or in a meta game where then everybody picks rock, it's still better to play paper, because you still are 49 or 99% favored against rock. So that means if everybody picks rock, it's always better to pick paper. And like in the drafting stuff, the meta game plays a part. That's what I wanted to say. Then there's also the luck part of Magic itself, and then there's the skill part of Magic itself. And like all these things water the importance of the draft itself down. The draft, actually, if it's an open draft, in Magic it's a closed draft, so you don't know the metagame. But if it's an open draft, you at least take the metagame out of the consideration, because you see what other people are doing, and then you can react to it. Anyway, so in Seven Wonders, it's different. In Seven Wonders, there is no other parts. You will draft, and once you're finished with drafting, you count up your points and the game is over. Which is a very interesting thing to do, because it really puts the focus on the drafting itself and what you're doing. And actually, in Seven Wonders, you are building buildings, and you can already see, if you think about Seven Wonders, you could actually port that into a video game and have a decent game. The thing about Seven Wonders, though, is that the theme would probably not be good enough for video games, because the problem is, in video games, we don't really want realism, because like realism sucks. Like, some people want realism, don't get me wrong, and please don't spam me through, but usually card games feel better than realistic games. Usually games that are more forgiving than realism feel better. And like realism is like if you have a realistic game that um, a realistic rally game basically that is 100% realistic, to be able to really compete, you will need to spend a lot of time. That's just how it is in a real racing environment. Like look at the real racing environment. You would need to spend a lot of time to compete at any level, and then it will be a slow thing to do. And it's like a lot of stuff you need to learn. And in a video game, you usually want to have the power fantasy that we can actually do the tasks and that it's realistic in a way, but it should not be too realistic because then we get bored or it's too complex and all that stuff. So what I want to say, a long thing that I try to say, but what I wanted to say is just that I think the theme would not be good enough. I think in a video game you could not just pick the buildings without any explanation and without anything. Like I don't think that would work, but I'm not sure. Like maybe you can make it work. Maybe you will have, I don't know, merchants coming into your city and offering you stuff or stuff like that you might be able to get around with that. But anyway, so that's Seven Wonders. What they do for just so that we talked a little bit about how the game itself works. Basically, it is very similar to Magic. You will get a pack of cards, but the pack is different to Magic. You will not buy it every time. You buy the game once, and you own it. And there are, I don't know, let's say there are 100 cards, and you will shuffle all of them up, and then you will deal out a subset of these 100 cards to all the players, and then with the subset of the cards, everyone will draft around. At least I think that's how it works. I only played this once or twice, so if I'm saying it wrong a little bit, I'm sorry, but it's not really important to the discussion. But that's the main idea. You will basically get a randomized amount of cards. If they are all or not, I'm not sure. Anyway, so and then you will pass the cards around and pick all the cards, and then you will build your city. What is important to understand about Seven Wonders, first of all, you will see here the information is open. I'm not sure how it exactly works. Like I cannot remember if I thought there might during the draft phase the stuff would be hidden information, but I'm not quite sure. Like I'm not sure if you will turn over the cards immediately or only after one round of everybody picking. It's not really important. It's just a small thing, which might be really important for the game, but not important to the discussion. So, but what happens is, first of all, you will see other people building stuff. So, if he is building stuff that, let's say each of these colors of cards, they actually have a meaning, I don't remember them, but let's say he's picking a lot of yellow cards. So you know that if you also pick yellow, because you are behind him, you will not get a lot of yellow cards. So you should maybe pick the brown cards. And like, that's what I said before with the meta game, and that only works though if you are passing cards around and having the game interact in this way. And there's also what that also does is you can actually on purpose pick cards away from other people so that they cannot use them, even if you can't really use them as well as they can. So that's an interesting mechanic that is specific to drafting, and because you have indirect interaction basically. It's kind of indirect. Like you're not really killing the stuff from him, but you're basically taking away the possibility for him to use it, which is a great thing to do. Yeah, and it's also not as punishing for the other player, which makes it a more interesting decision for you, because if it's really good to do that for you, you will always do it, and it will not feel as harsh to the other player. He might still think, come on, you picked that away from me, that's not nice. But it's not as if you just destroyed his building and his work is undone. It's just that his options are more limited, which I think is fine. It's just a good way to have player interaction without actually killing stuff. Yeah, so but you go around and all these cards also have synergy, so you get pushed into different directions, and in the end you will count up your points, and then one with the most points wins. And that's Seven Wonders. There's a complicated scoring system in this, but it's not really important. I think these actually just give the points standing here. and other cards will give. The more you have, the more you will get, and like, but the that's not really important. There's also built-in progression that you can see here, like with 1, 2, and 3. The cards with the 3 on the back will be the last ones dealt out, and they will also be the most powerful. Yes. Next. Dominion. Okay. Dominion. So I know, Dominion is not a drafting game. It's called a deck building game. But it's still a drafting game. I don't care what people say. That's just bullshit. Now, it's not. It's a little bit different, but it's not that different. Like, a deck building game is basically a drafting game where you put your cards to multiple usage, and it's also a drafting game where you play already while drafting, which is nice. Which I said before, I really like that. I like if you have it integrated into the game and it's not two parts. I'm not saying two parts is bad, and you will see that in my game ideas there are actually some two-part games in there as well, and I think even more than one-part games. But I still think it's a good thing to think about if you don't split up the game from the actually drafting, then it actually will feel more natural. And Dominion does that really well. Like you draft your cards, which is basically buying. The difference in Dominion, so for all those people who don't know how Dominion works, maybe I should shortly explain it as well. Dominion is a card game. You can see here, cards cost a certain amount of money below his fingertip here. There's a 2. You will see here 1, but that's not the actual cost. The actual cost is down here. That's a 0 in this case. 1 is the amount of gold this card gives, or copper in this case. So you will get 1 money unit, let's say it like this, and this will give you also 2 money units, and then you can buy cards from the middle, and the costs are, as I said here, you usually will be able to play 1 card and buy 1 card each round, and that's all you can do. And that's basically the entire game. That's just all. Cards will just change that up, like cards always do in board games. This card, for example, will say you have 2 more cards you can play. So you play this, then you have 0 cards you can play, but then afterwards you will be able to play 2, and you will also draw a card, which is actually kind of a good card. This card it's a really card that a lot of people play. And this will say here you can buy an additional card and also get 2 gold. So what that does is, like, maybe you want to buy 2 cards with his hand here. Maybe you want to buy 2 cards for 2 instead of 1 card for 4. And that will also change the strategy. All this stuff, all this comes down to, in the end, you will put everything onto one pile face up, and once your face down pile of cards is gone, you will shuffle your face up pile of cards and draw from them again. And the cards you bought will also go into that pile. So the more you play, the more cards you will see. It also has an interesting progress mechanic like that, because usually at the beginning you will not be able to afford the more expensive cards. Like sometimes you are, but not all the time. And because of that, you will first have cheaper cards, which will appear more often, and then later on you will buy the more expensive cards, but by that time you have already more cards in your pile, and then you will be able to draw them only slower. So you have a natural progression into that, which is a really nice, a really nice thing. Yes, so that is Dominion. Also a very interesting game. Now we get to video games and Mobas. So, Mobas, where to start? Okay, so first of all, Mobas are, as with Magic, a 2-part game. Like, the drafting part is there, and then there's also the playing part. And this, like, let's first talk about the draft itself, and then I will go into how important I think the draft is. So, in Mobas, if you play in ranked matches, what will happen is you will first get to ban a couple of champions, which is also going like turn-wise. You, me, you, me, you, me, something like that. I'm not sure if that's completely correct, but that's basically how it works. I actually think it's you, then, or me, then 2 times you, then 2 times me, then 1 time, because that's how the drafting works as well. Anyway, so, but that's not really important. The thing is that afterwards you will get to draft also the champions, and then your team will pick one champion. Then the enemy team, as I said before, will pick two. Then you will pick two. Then they will pick two. Then you will pick two, and they will pick one. They're doing that, I think, to counteract the first player advantage a little bit, because they are the first ones who get to pick two champions, and they are the ones to pick the last one, which is also more reactive. But they are the one who picked the first champion, which is the best of the champions left after banning. So that, I think, is the basic idea for them. If it works or not, you can discuss. But that's actually a neat thing to do, and at least it weakens the advantage that one over the other gets. Like, if actually picking first is more important than picking last. If picking last would be more important, then actually you should do it the other way around, like 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, something like that. Anyway, but they figured picking first is the bigger advantage, and so they build a system like this. And so now I get to the problems I have with the draft. Like, first of all, it's a two-part draft, and I think that because of the length of the game afterwards, only the length even, it is not as much on your mind once the game's finished. That's just a weak disadvantage. But stronger disadvantages are that if you play with random people at least, first of all, you don't really have a real draft going on, because people will not strategize over this. People will pick what they like, at least at lower levels of ranked play. Maybe in higher levels that changes, but people will pick what they like, and also what they own, which is the next problem. Like, the entire drafting, usually a draft is based around that people have this, at least all the players. That's also not true, but like, it's a huge difference if you own two champions, or like I think you need to own 5 to play, but if you own 5 or all the 100 champions. Because first of all, if you only own the ones you own, you can only pick the character you play. In these Mobas, you can actually change the characters with friends, which is important if you are in a tournament scene. Like, all of this doesn't really apply in tournament scenes, because there it is way more important, and there I like it more. But I think for the casual player, it is not that good. Like, or even the ones aspiring professionals, let's call them like this, it's not that good, because, like, first of all, in a random game, there are 5 people there, and who's the one to call the shots? You don't know that, and that's what happens is people will just pick what they like. Maybe some teams will talk to each other better than other teams, and then they might have a strategy. But there's also limited amount of time for this, so it's not easy, to say at least, to get a good strategy going, especially like if you still need to figure out who's the leader and who does what and everything. So usually what it will come down to is people will say what they can play and what champions they have, and then maybe if some people know, like, okay, this is a really high valued character and it's still open from the bannings, maybe I pick him, and then he can pick the other character I really like to play, and we can change. But that only works, as I said before, if the other guy has the character he wants and you have the highly valued character. So these are really important things. And then the next thing is that there's also a lot of skill to the playing of the game itself, so it's also getting watered down there as well. So I think the strategic part is not as important in MOBAs. What I mean with the strategic part, I mean the strategic part of the drafting. It's not as important as it might seem at first glance. Once again, this is not true for tournament play. Tournament play is very different. As soon as you have a team who has like, where everyone has like most of the champions at least, and you have a leader who is calling the shots and everything changes. Everyone knows the position beforehand, and like everything is really changed. But in a random kind of way, I think it's not as strong as it could be. But as I said, I think they did it for balancing reasons, and I think actually that's going quite well. And they're also getting a lot more once again, I cannot pronounce the word variation variation into the game, and that's I think they achieved it here as well. So it's good for variation as always, but I don't think that the actual drafting part is as important. People will still put a lot of importance on it, and it is important, but it is at least the decisions are more limited in a in a game where you don't know the other people's playing. Yes. Enough about LOL. Let's go to Hearthstone. Hearthstone is, as Magic, a trading card game. It's just an online version of a trading card game. And they also have drafting. As with all the other games, they have a drafting part. They call it Arena. The difference in Hearthstone, though, is that you actually get random cards and there's nobody else picking them. So you will just get 3 cards at random. You pick one, then you get the next 3 random cards. It's obviously not really random. It's procedural random. So and you will also pick what you want to play before. So you will also get the choice of 3 champions, and you can pick one. And champion is basically a strategy layer. Like each champion has special cards only he can use, and by picking the champion you will only get the special cards of this champion. You will still get all the cards that everyone has, like there are also cards that everyone can play, but the cards that are specific to this champion, you will basically say, okay, that's the champion I want to play, and out of these 3 random ones. So with that out of the way, I think that's actually a really interesting approach. It solves a lot of problems that Wizard had going into it. The first one is that a draft usually requires more people, and usually even more than 2. Like a draft in Magic requires 8 people. 7 Wonders, I would say, is played best with 4. And so that's like not as good. But you could still say you can play it with 2 people. But then you have the problem. What usually will happen is if you play it with 2 people, you will draft and then play once, and then your deck is invalid, basically. Because usually what drafting games will do is you will only play against people who were in the same pot as you, and because like they at least had similar chances. Like even if the packs are different, but you could interact indirectly with them and all that stuff. And so by doing just a completely random route, you never have to wait for anyone to be there, and you can play against anyone else, which is a great way to do drafting games. What it also enables them, what they don't do yet, and I got this idea when I first recorded the podcast, and the voice was off, so the microphone was not turned on, so I have to re-record it again. But what they could do is they could actually put a seed in so that everyone gets the same cards to pick, and then everybody plays against the same against other people with the same cards, and then you will see the different strategies that they had, because they picked different cards, and then you will see how that basically plays out. And you could do that like once a day. You will change it up, and then people can play with either of those. Maybe you can even do like 3 random seeds, like for the 3 champions you choose, and then you will be able to compete against each other and see who is the best at winning with a certain champion or with the entire pool or whatever. Yeah, but I think you get the idea, and I think it's actually an interesting idea for people to actually get better at drafting, because it's really hard to get better at it because of the ever-changing nature. And what I just suggested, so if anybody from Blizzard is watching this, which I highly doubt, but anyway, if you're watching, go and implement this, because I'm a really experienced Magic player, and it's always really hard for new people to get into drafting, because actually drafting is a lot of skill. Like there's a lot of skill involved in picking the right cards, and then also playing again. And that's also because this is also a 2-part process. It's not as clear if you actually did the mistake in the drafting portion or if you did the mistake later on. And by basically letting people redraft the same thing over and over and over again, they can actually get better at the drafting portion, because they can see how different draft will affect their games overall and not just one game. And they can see what other people thought about, and maybe they see, oh, they like this card, maybe I should try it as well, and then they will just go again, draft the thing again, and it will actually be fairly quickly. If you do it really well, you can even then, once you're finished, hover over the card and have like the 3 options available again, and then just let them exchange the one card, so they don't have to go through the entire drafting process again. So if anyone is listening or if anyone knows of you, someone from Blizzard, please tell them, because I actually like Hearthstone and it would be a nice feature and I would love to see it. If not, I guess at some point I will need to continue with the card game I wanted to do, and then there I will build it in, and then I will get rich. No, not really, but anyway. So, next one. Drafting in video games that already exist. Sports managers. Sports managers, I think, are not the strongest ones for drafting, but it's actually what they do. Like, the basic concept of a sports manager is you have a team. That's not perfect, at least if you start with an imperfect team. If you start with a really strong team, it's already closer to perfect. But let's say you start with your hometown, and your hometown really sucks at the game. So you will have a weak team, but you will, because you manage the team clever, and you will buy, and that's what the drafting thing is. You will buy players from the global market, and the global market has like a lot of players, and because you have already a team assembled and with different strengths and weaknesses, you need to find out which person is the right person for you to buy right now. And that's where the strategy comes in. And because you already have a team, it actually makes that not everybody wants to buy the same person. Because maybe you have already a pretty good goalkeeper, but you need somebody who shoots the goals. Then you will just get him. Like, I'm talking about soccer usually, because that's what I know. I don't really know, what is it, rugby or something like that. I don't really know that, but I think it's more or less the same idea with these sports managers. I know that they do a lot of other stuff as well. How you get money is influenced not only by who you pick, or at least in the newer ones, what I heard. But that's the basic thing. Like that's the basic premise of the game is you pick the team, you choose the strategy for the game, like how are they supposed to play, and then you see them winning, hopefully, and then you will play better players, and that's how the game progresses itself. Like basically, you play better, and that's where you get money. Then you have more money than before, then you can buy even better players, and then you repeat this again. Then you will play in your league again. You will hopefully do better again, then you will earn more money than in the last year, then you will have even more money to spend on even better players, and so on and so forth, and in the end you will have the perfect team and everything will be great, and you finish the game. Or you just get bored, which I think is more the case for these kind of games, because a season goes really long. There's another thing I wanted to mention quickly. What I think is interesting, they also have a part that not everybody has access to, which is the scouting. What they usually implement is that you can send some persons out to different countries, and they will look for different positions for players or different kinds of players. Like maybe you need a fast player, and you tell the scouting guy, I need a really fast player who shoots goals, and go look in Brazil, because I know in Brazil people are cheap or something like that. So I think that's a really interesting thing, because then what happens is the scout will come back with a list of players he observed, and he will give, and only you will have access to them. And so that also mixes the decision making a little bit up, so that you not only have your team, but also have a limited pool of players that only you see and only you have, and maybe because of that you can actually sell your good goalkeeper because you have an even better one. And maybe goalkeepers are right now not easy to get, but the one you found is like really cheap, and like it can mix stuff up a little bit. I'm not saying that these are the strongest drafting games, at least in my opinion, but they are drafting games in the end, and I actually enjoyed playing them when I was younger. Maybe I should check them out again, but like I just didn't really have the interest anymore. But that's sports managers for drafting in video games. Now we will get to drafting game ideas that I had, and I probably will never do, because I just cannot do as much games as I have ideas for. So if you are interested in any of the stuff I'm talking about, feel free to go ahead, grab the idea and perfect it, because obviously these are just very rough sketches of ideas and not a finished product or anything. So if you want to take any of the ideas I mentioned, please go ahead and do so. The only thing that I would like you to do is maybe send me an early alpha if you can. Like, it's not a must, but it would be nice to see actually the progress, and I would love to see an idea of mine come to life, or it's not in the end it will not be even my idea anymore, but the concept of me coming to life, because like these ideas are so rough that it's more just it's more a concept, not an idea even. So, but drafting in video games, how can we actually implement that? So the first thing I want to talk about is a drafting RTS. You could do that. Like actually, what I put here is like these are Seven Wonders cards, and this is of a trading company. A nice game. You should check it out. I just bought it recently, and I actually enjoyed quite a lot. It's an economic RTS. So if you are looking for something a little bit different, go ahead and check this out. And if you actually own the company, go write me a check right now. No, I'm just joking. Um, but if you want to, you really can. Um, or at least give me some listeners, or that would be enough. Tell your friends if you're the owner. Write it on your Facebook page so that people actually find this podcast. That would be enough. Yeah, anyway, so the idea basically is that you will get here a list of buildings that you can get. And like as I said, this is just a concept. Like you might do it like in Seven Wonders where you just pick it and then you get to build the building and then there will be a new card. And you will continue, basically. You could do that and like you might have a little bit of problems justifying that to the player why it is like that, but you can come up with a reason for that, I guess. Like maybe, like actually, I like Offer Trading Company as an example. That's why I took it because you can actually say that there are not infinite amounts of people there, and like actually in Offer Trading Company everything is automated. But if you would not do that, if you would say like, okay, there are only 200 people here, and 200 people can only do so much work. So maybe they just can do that right now, and you cannot get this again later. You can do this in different kinds of fashions. You could say, okay, if some pick this, maybe just for a amount of time, other people cannot build this building, and later on they can again. Or maybe the price will increase, or something like that. Maybe it will just stay the same. Maybe you do it just as a Dominion. Everyone can pick everything that is here, and you just have a small section of cards you own, or other factors that make you go different directions. Because the thing that made you in Dominion go into different directions is the amount of money you draw randomly, and that I would not implement here. I think that's not really nice, and I'm actually imagining a real-time strategy game, so I would say that you will just get a fixed amount of money depending on the buildings you have all the time, and that's that. So anyway, so no matter how you do it, you could just do a very similar thing to a drafting game and already have an RTS. With the added advantage that actually the gameplay will vary drastically every time you play. Because, first of all, you can have a different amount of starting buildings you have. You can also, what you can also do is, if you have like your standard buildings you can always build, um, you can also incentivize the player to choose different strategies to win. And like as I said, I'm not sure if this game should be combat focused or other things. Like I'm not saying any of that. I'm just talking about the building part of the game as a drafting game. And like if you want to do it like in a Seven Wonders fashion, then you would just do it for points basically. And maybe once somebody reach 10 points, the game is over, or something like that. And it could be really interesting. You could have the indirect interaction, like if you really pick a building and it's gone and it will be replaced with another building, um, that might be interesting. Like you can also implement timing changes. Maybe later on in the time, like similar to Seven Wonders, another card and another card is unlocked that you can draft all the time because this is real time. I would not change this. Um, or just better cards get put in there, or more cards get unlocked so you can pick more cards. Like as you can see, if I'm talking, there's nothing really like cemented here. It's just put a drafting game into an RTS, and you already get an incredible amount of interesting things you can do. And if you do that, I actually think it would be a very interesting game to play, and people would actually enjoy it a lot. The only thing you have to come up with is the justification if you really want to come up with that. Like maybe, like if you cannot come up with a justification, you can always go into abstract games, and you can do that. But as I said, you in a game like of a trading company, you can actually come up with a good justification, saying that there are limited amount of people here, we have a limited amount of resource, so they might even have to wait for some time before this comes back. Maybe even you can then interact with them and then sell them stuff like in of a trading company where you have different goods you can build, and then only if there are enough goods again they can build it or stuff like that. But or as I said before, you can what you can also do always with RTSs is because you have a map, maybe the position, that's what of a trading company does as well, is important for what you get, and what you get will influence the decisions you make on what you pick. And like all this stuff is very interesting, I think, and not really cemented or in any way. Like this is, as I said, just a rough sketch of an idea. And if you are interested, because I don't think I will ever be able to build this. Maybe I will, I don't know. At the point when I'm finished with this game, I will actually have to do a lot of prototyping, and this is probably one of the ideas. Anyway, so that's the drafting RTS game. Next one. Drafting equipment. I actually had a hard time finding a theme for this, a thematic justification, but in the end I actually figured a good way, and I actually think it's a pretty small game. Like, there is some stuff you need to do, which is not that easy, but it's actually kind of a cool, really small game idea. Like, it's really small if you do it exactly what I think you do, how I think you can do it. Like, what I'm suggesting is basically you will draft the equipment for your character or for the player, and then just battle against each other, and like just do a battle, like maybe a battle like a Tekken, like Tekken style, but it's not Tekken style, it's in 3D, or maybe it's in 2D. Like, I don't know. Like, you can do whatever you want. Maybe you do a Tekken game where you draft your equipment and spells before. Actually, that's cool. Like, you draft basically your character before the game. Like, that's cool. So the thematic justification for this might be that you get to use these magical weapons and trinkets, and each of them is only one time available. And in this world, you will settle disputes with a duel, and as you know from films, in a duel you will always get to pick your weapons and stuff. And so in this world, it will actually be like that every city basically has its own arena, and they have their own weapons there. And these weapons, you have to choose one of their weapons to fight, and then you will basically pick each other. Like, maybe you will do it as in the Mobas, as in LOL, where the first one gets to pick one, and then the second one gets to pick two, and then two, and then two, and then one, and then one, and then you will start fighting. And like, you can then either pick weapons or pick armor. Maybe you can pick abilities, but picking abilities is like a little bit tricky. But maybe you will pick a trinket that gives you an ability, which is always a nice way around. It's always a nice way around having to explain why you get certain abilities. Or maybe just your armor stuff will give you abilities as well. Like, your clothing will just give you the abilities. Like, all this stuff can be done, and it would actually lead to, once again, a very varied game experience every time. And I actually think that one will not take that much effort. Like, what you need to do is you need to have characters where you can equip different stuff to them and have animations for them to fight. And that's basically it. Multiplayer, obviously. But it's a small game. It's actually a really small game, which is interesting. I might just prototype that. Not right now, because I really don't want to prototype anymore, because I really need to focus on what I'm doing right now. But still, I think it's a really neat idea, and I actually think it's quite doable. So that's the drafting equipment game. And then we have drafting a team, where we get once again into RTS or turn-based categories. Like before, also you could also do all of these stuff turn-based. Like, because of the drafting aspect, you might appeal to people already that have a heavy emphasis on strategy games, and they will obviously more like other strategy game parts. And turn-based is more strategic than real-time, just because even if there's the same amount of complexity in there, the just the execution of itself will water down the important skill of strategy. But if you do that, always keep in mind that it comes also at a cost, because if you actually no, how am I putting this correctly? If you mix skill-based or twitch-based games, like execution-based games, with strategy games, what you will have is that people with less that are not as good in strategy but are better in execution will also be able to play. So what you will actually get is you will have a broader audience that can play against each other without losing, which is a really important thing to understand. I actually heard a lot of people getting this wrong. A lot of people say it's not good at all to have having a mix of strategy and execution-based games, and I actually disagree. I think it's a good thing. Obviously, it's not for free. You need to, like, if you are the really hardcore strategy game guys might not like it, especially if they are not good in execution. But still, maybe even if they are good in execution, they don't like it because they just want to shine in strategy. There are people who will not like that. But usually you will broaden your audience because, first of all, more people will be able to play it. Even if you are on the very low end of the strategy part, you might enjoy the execution, and because of that, you might get better in the strategy part, and then that's a way you can get into the game. And like in a game that is only about execution or only about strategy, you will always not have that. I'm saying that while building a Twitch-only based game. I'm just saying that's not for every game. I'm just saying you need to think about this stuff, and mixing. I think for this kind of thing is fine, but anyway, you can go either way. Just be aware of the costs associated with doing the decision. Yes. So back to drafting a team. Drafting a team could be either in a real-time strategy way or in a turn-based strategy way, as I said. Let's say we do it real-time and we do a skirmish thing where you can basically then pick 5 heroes and then compete against other 5 heroes in the easiest case. Obviously, there will be a lot of problems there because if you lose one, you might have already lost or stuff like that. I'm not saying this is a perfect gaming idea right now. I'm just saying that's a possibility. You might also, instead of unlocking the heroes directly, you might just pick buildings that you can build then later. So that's a little bit harder to get the thematics across, but that's still a very interesting thing. Like, let's imagine StarCraft, where you not have the 3 races, but every time you play, you would be able to say which, like, you would get 20 buildings, and each player can then pick in turn order, one building at a time which he wants to build. And like maybe you have like some special buildings that you always get. Maybe you do it like Hearthstone, where you say like some buildings only some people have access to, and they still need to pick them, but they will always have access to them, so they always know that there's certain stuff, and that will actually give them a certain advantage over the other. You might randomize that. Anything you can think of, you could do that, and it would be really interesting. It would be really interesting to see how people will incorporate it into their strategy. Once again, this is, I think, the weakest ones where the drafting part plays the weakest role if you really pick the buildings and then still execute on the buildings. It's still interesting. I'm not saying, like, I'm actually a huge fan of Magic, so I'm just saying that the drafting aspect is a little bit put into the back, as with Mobas or with Magic. But it's still there, it's still very important, and once again, it might broaden your audience, because some people might, even if they are strategy people, might not be good at drafting, and then if there's another strategy layer on top of that where they are good at, they might get better at that. So just keep that in mind. And if you randomize stuff and have people being able to pick stuff away, you can also build a little bit of a inequality in there, so that some people might get lucky, and luck in games is actually a good thing, at least what I think, because it also evens the playing field more. You don't need to do that. Like, if you don't like luck in games, just don't. But it's actually the good kind of luck. It's almost the perfect kind of luck. It's input randomness, so you will see it beforehand. Obviously, the guy who picks first has an advantage because he can pick the first one. But then if you get to pick two, it gets more interesting. Like the Mobas solution to this is actually a kind of nice one. Anyway, so that's one thing you could do. There's also, like, in a normal RTS, you might just be able to hire certain amounts of people for money here all the time, and that's also a drafting mechanic, and maybe the price will decrease over time or something like that. There's so much thing you can do with this kind of drafting mechanic, especially for strategy games. I think that's the most important thing here, because other games, like I had a fighting game in there, but basically it was a strategy game combined with a fighting game, which is still fine, don't get me wrong. It's just a little bit different than what we are used to. So I think that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode as always. If you liked what you heard, please like the video. Follow me on Twitter. That's @KeyboardSamurai with an Y in the end. Follow, like my Facebook page for Will Glow the Wisp, which is Will Glow the Wisp on Facebook. Just search for it. Go to my website www.parttimeindie.com. You can leave comments there, see my contact data. Download the version of the game there, or download it at IndieDB. Also search for Will Glow the Wisp. Everywhere you go, I will really appreciate feedback as always. I'm doing this so that, for one, because I'm enjoying talking about games, and I hope you enjoy listening and thinking about them as I do as well. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this once again. Have a nice week, and bye.